good-looking crowd. As I've told some people, well, no. But, when I was asked to do this, I had no idea the theme of what the theme was going to be initially, of being grateful. And I had no idea that I was going to spend 5 days in the COVID unit before I got here. And boy, you talk about grateful, though. I mean, I truly am grateful about the care that I got and the people. And what else was nice was when I was sitting in there, you can't have your family or friends to come and visit, but to have family and friends or friends that I knew that would stick their head in the door and say hello to me every day, and that was special. And I am so grateful for that, and the encouragement, that I got while I was in there, and people, just you got this, you're going to be fine, and the way, just helps you to believe, to truly believe that that's the way it's going to be, and thankfully that's the way it worked out. But and I think about that because I remember when I was just finished kayaking the Potomac Gorge section of the Zambezi River just below Victoria Falls over in Africa. I got into a conversation over there with a local Zambian man, and he told me, he said, Lonnie, over here we don't teach the blind. We simply have them stand on the corner and beg. I thought, beg? Really? Do they really think we're that irrelevant with no value or no purpose? Or is he letting me know that he was able to refocus his mind and see someone like me from another perspective? I can't even begin to imagine how those folks over there felt when standing on a corner. That's all they thought they could do. I truly believe that just like simply changing the lens on a camera, if we're able to refocus our mind, expand our sense of vision, that vision that's in our hearts, our mind, our souls, our spirit, then we can see outside the box, beyond the status quo, and we can achieve the perceived impossible and turn our dreams into reality. I truly am. I've been so blessed throughout my life. And, I think, too, just after this, after I lost my eyesight, my 3 little girls, to have them in my life, Courtney, Ashley, and Taylor, I call them Court, Peanut, and Bug, and they truly, allowed me to see that light in the darkness, and they changed my vision more than the loss of my eyesight ever did. And they're the ones, while all these adults were saying, no, Lonnie, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. They were saying, go, go, go. And before long, I was out there doing a lot of the things I used to do, a little differently and a little help, but, like push mowing outside and using a chainsaw and all that stuff. And I'll never forget, I was outside late one night, well after dark, and I was mowing the bank in between the road and the pond, and I heard a car pull up and honk its horn. So I shut off the lawnmower. My neighbor, she rolled her window down. She said, Lonnie, do you realize you're mowing in the dark? I just smiled and thought, here's your sign. And I'm not going to repeat what she said after she saw me smile. But, and, a few years after that, I even started teaching my daughters how to drive. I started out in a little field right behind the house in the truck, and as they got better, we took off going down the county roads. And when they got even better than that, they occasionally let me drive. And if there's any police officers in here, I will deny that story forever. And then, after that, I got into building houses, something I never did before I lost my eyesight. Framing, sheeting, wiring, roofing. And I've been asked so many times now by people who see me on a roof for the first time, they'll say, Lonnie, what are you doing on a roof? My standard answer, I'm on a roof? Help! But I am so thankful for those 3 girls because they taught me that, blindness is a part of me. Just like where I'm from, how I was raised, just like all of us. Our past, it's always a part of us. Our history, it's a part of us. But they taught me that it doesn't define me unless I allow it to. And they taught me that, in order to truly move forward, I have to let go of all these negative emotions. That's how we all are. But Dr. Nito Kubain, president of High Point University, he said, through adversity, you get opportunity. And I think about that. Through the adversity, I was blessed with the opportunity to live the next chapter of my life. And that chapter started when I went to the VA Blind Rehab Center up in Chicago. And while I was up there, they asked me, they said, Lonnie, we know blind people snow ski, but we've never done it here as a recreational outing. And I met all these younger guys coming back from the war. And they said, we'd really like to try it to see if it'll work. I said, will you be our guinea pig? I said, twist my arm. If they can do it, we can do it. I got that confidence from the girls. You can do this. So it started up on a little bunny hill up in Wilmot, Wisconsin. And they told me, they said, hang on to this tow rope, and when you get to the top, let go. So I was like, okay, hang on to this rope, my knees shaking back and forth. Well, this rope goes around a pulley that's attached to this post. Well, next thing I know, I face plant that post, end up on the ground, and I sat up laughing. I said, hey, Adaptive 101. How about teaching a blind guy when he gets to the top? But then, the snow skiing that led me out to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, probably the 5th day I was ever on a set of skis in my life. And it was just a few months after I started. And we was on this little bitty cut-through trail, and I heard this clicking noise out in front of me, and I just started following it. And I asked my guides, I said, what is that noise? And they told me it's someone tapping their ski poles together. So I asked them, I said, can we try that? Can you guys get out in front of me and try that? So we did, and couldn't really hear it. So they went and I got a whistle. Now, the guides started blowing that whistle, and I couldn't really echolocate that whistle. And my guide was just exhausted, blowing it all the time. So they went and found a pipe in a bar and started beating it together, and it worked. So with a little bit of innovation, they went and they found a cowbell. That very day, I went from skiing those little flat green slopes and bunny hills, being guided from behind, to being guided in front with a cowbell, skiing my first blue slope and black slope. And a few years later, I was clocked at a little over 60 miles an hour skiing a black diamond out in Aspen, Colorado. So if there's any Saturday Night Live fans out here, I need more cowbell, baby. But the snow skiing led me to a clinic where I was then introduced to mountaineering, rock climbing, and kayaking. And on one of my first mountaineering trips out in Colorado, climbing a 14,000-footer, I was joined by a good friend who lost his eyesight in Afghanistan. And after that, while we was out there, we decided to go try to climb Mount Kilimanjaro together, which is the highest peak in Africa. But he developed spinal meningitis, which also took his hearing, leaving him not only blind, but deaf. And I remember communicating with him and said, hey, I'm not gonna go climb without you. And he yelled, he said, no, 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 no. He said, you climb it for me, you climb it for us, you climb it for all of us. And I was so blown away. In his total darkness and silence, that we still shared a vision. A vision that was much more than just me and him standing on a mountaintop. We wanted to prove the potential that was in each and every one of us. And that there's hardly nothing beyond us if we'll just unite for a common goal. And I knew that I still had to carry out that vision. So I boarded a plane to Africa to go over there and climb with people I'd never met. All walks of life, all different ages. One guy missing a foot, another with a traumatic brain injury, and a Navy SEAL by the name of Oz who was going to climb on behalf of a fallen comrade. And when I got over there, I told him the story about my buddy and another guy who lost his eyesight in Iraq. And I said, guys, no matter what, I've got to get to the top of this mountain and get 2 little rocks, one for each of them. And I was so amazed how instantly united that entire group. And how each and every one of them insisted on helping me up that mountain. And I'll never forget Oz. He told me, he said, Lonnie, he said, if I have to carry you, I promise you'll get to the top of that mountain. So we started up through the jungle where I just longed to hear the monkeys cry as they described the vast green foliage. Then we went up through the meadows where I could smell the flowers, and our porters, they were yelling, pole, pole, or slow, slow in Swahili. Every time I got a new guide, it was like putting a new lens on my mind. We climbed the 800-foot breakfast wall. We woke up the next morning, and they described to me how the fog looked like a huge pillow or blanket covering the peaks and valleys below before it rose up and engulfed us. We went up past the glacier field on our left until we reached the summit at 19,341 feet. And I was led there by a man lying in his hospital bed who couldn't see or hear. And as I stood there, I heard someone say, Lonnie, hold out your hand. And in it, they placed those two little rocks. And a year ago, January, I was joined by another guy, a blind veteran, down in Argentina as we tried to climb Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in the western and southern hemispheres, at 22,841 feet. I'll not forget starting out as the terrain was just rough to walk on. It was hot. It was super hot. And on the last day, climbing to the summit, I was as cold as I'd ever been, with 45-mile-an-hour winds blowing off the glacier across this ridge line before we went on up to the summit. But when I got up there, I reached down and I picked up two more little rocks. And I can guarantee you all that I know I have much more vision now than I ever did when I had eyesight. And I think Helen Keller, she once said, she said, the only thing worse than being blind is having eyesight with no vision. I think about that. Vision, though. Vision is nothing but merely a dream unless you do something to turn it into reality. The rock climbing was a dream. It took me back to a dream that I had when I was stationed out in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And it took me back to a level of trust that I hadn't experienced since I was in the military. Because I was once again not only putting my life in someone else's hands, they were literally putting theirs in mine. And I could see, as I drove back and forth across eastern Wyoming, I could see Devil's Tower off in the distance, our nation's first national monument. And if you've ever seen Close Encounters, you've seen Devil's Tower. As I drove back and forth, coming back home to home here in Indiana, I always wondered if people climbed it, and if so, how, and what it would feel like to be up on top of it. And I told this to a climbing friend of mine. He said, okay, let's just make it happen. So when we got there, we had to scramble up over these rocks and boulders to the base of the route we were going to take to the top, 700 and some vertical feet. I stood there and I started putting on all my gear and a little backpack that had a few snacks and some water in it, weighed maybe 3 or 4 pounds. And here he was, he threw on this huge backpack with all this extra safety gear and food and a whole rack of climbing gear and 2 70-meter ropes. So you guys tell me there's not an advantage to being blind. But then, as we stood there, he started teaching me again how to properly position my hands and my feet. And he made sure that I knew how to clear that gear and to connect it to myself as we went up. And he made sure that I knew how to blame or catch him should he fall. Because, this was the real deal. I'd belayed him several times in the gym, but this was the real deal. And then, move by move, step by step, inch by inch, we started up that wall. Everything I touched, I was painting this picture in my mind. And I remember going up this one chimney section with my feet on one side of the wall and my hands and back on the other side of the wall. And then we went up a second chimney section where I almost passed out. It was my fault. I knew I was burning all this fuel, but I wasn't eating or drinking, even though he was telling me to. But I was pushing so hard, not only because he trusted me to make those moves and clear the gear or catch him should he fall, but simply because he believed in me. He believed in me. And he believed in me so much, he had me lead the final pitch to the top. And when I got up there, I inadvertently placed my hand on a cactus and give out a little yelp. As I stood there pulling out the needles of the cactus, He was laughing and said, "Congratulations, Lonnie B, you made it." But it's the way he laughed that I'm pretty sure he knew I was going to find this cactus. But then, I stood there and I thought, you don't ever give up on a dream. You never give up on a dream. And I guarantee you that picture or portrait that I painted had much greater depth and detail than if I'd have painted it over 30 years ago. And it made me recall the words of Warren Buffett, that trust is like the air that we breathe. When it's there, nobody notices. When it's not there, everybody notices. But then I was given another dream. And I was asked, I said, "Lonnie, how would you like to be the first blind veteran to kayak the entire length of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon?" Something that had never been done before. I thought, wow. Well, I've been down that Grand Canyon 4 times now. The last time I was joined by 4 other veterans who lost their eyesight as a result of combat. And the time before that, I was led by a guy who had a traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, and another gentleman who lost both legs and most of both hands. And not only was this guy leading me through all the hero lines on the rapids, or the biggest rapids, but here was this guy missing both legs and hands, leading me on all these side canyon hikes, across these little creeks, and through these slots, over these rocks and boulders, and very seldom did he ever ask for a hand. But yet the entire time, he just laughed and said, "I love the challenge." And we always got to where he wanted to go, sometimes a couple of thousand feet above the canyon floor. When I think about that, and I think about those other veterans, when we jump in our kayaks, we put on all of our gear and grab our paddles, and you look at us, you can't tell who's blind, who has traumatic brain injury, who's missing their legs. We look like every other kayaker, because the simple fact is, we are kayakers. And on all those trips, we started up at Lee's Ferry at the top and built up. And I can remember we would pass by House Rock, through the Roaring Twenties and the gyms. We'd go around Bedrock and split the horns and through Upset, which is where I took my very first swim on the canyon when my spray skirt imploded. Until we got to the top of the most well-known rapid on the river, Lava Falls. And it's the only rapid I ever saw. And I remember seeing it as a child on a television show that some of you guys might remember called Wild World of Sports. And it showed this raft getting ready to go into Lava Falls, into the rapid. And right at the top, there's this huge hole. The raft clipped that hole. It caused it to flip end over end over end. The people in the rigging went flying everywhere. So I wanted to make sure I missed that hole. And on my first trip through, we missed the hole, but we pushed too far to the right. And I got into this boiling water. It caused me to flip and caused me to get way offline. I rolled up, and then I got flipped again and jerked out of that kayak so violently that I thought it literally took off my legs. And while I was spinning and flipping under the water, they told me my kayak was 20, 30 foot up in the air doing the same thing. On that third trip down, Aaron, the guy who was missing both legs, we didn't get a scout. And as we sat above the rapid, I told him the story about Wild World of Sports and my first trip through, and he said, "Thanks for the pep talk, buddy." But then, since he didn't get a scout, Russ, the other guy, took the lead. We split the hole on our left, the boils on our right, drove right through, but pushed a little too far to the left, and a big lateral wave hit me and almost flipped me over. But I threw down a brace with my paddle and held it, but it slowed me down so much that I lost Russ out in front of me. So I hear Aaron coming around me, yelling, "I got you, buddy, I got you, on me, hop up," as we crashed through the big kahuna waves down below. We did it so well that we all hiked back up again, only this time Aaron took the lead, and we nailed it. And then, just like every other trip, we continued on downriver to a rapid at mile 205. It's a much smaller rapid with only 8 to 10 foot breaking waves. And on my first trip through, I had a perfect line, so they tell me. And As I went through it, the wave broke back over on itself just as I was going over the peak. Smacked me in the face so hard it snapped my glasses in half, launched me in the air, backflipped me. The guy behind me said, "That's cool, man." He said, "I saw your back. I saw the top of your head. I saw you upside down looking at me." I told him, I said, "I wasn't looking at you." He said, "You flipped over, rolled up, and paddled on." But then I'll never forget, when we got down to the camp that last night, I told him, I said, "Guys, this is cool. I have to admit, it's cool to say that we were the first to ever do this. But it's irrelevant and meaningless if we can't pay it forward." But that next morning, they got up. And I'll never forget, they grabbed a little pole with an American flag flying off of it, off the back of one of our support rafts. And they stuck it down the back of my life jacket. And I paddled the last 4 miles of the Grand Canyon with the American flag flying off my back and all these other disabled veterans around me. And we did it. And when I think about all those trips and all those folks, the one thing that they all have in common is they don't view a crossroads in life as a negative or a dead end. They view it as a positive, a place where you have choices. And they choose to live life instead of exist it. But just like that Grand Canyon, Victoria Falls is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. And the folks over there, they call it the smoke that thunders due to the massive roar and the mist that fills the air. I don't know about the mist, but I can definitely attest to that roar. And when I got over there, I was going to be paddling with people I'd never paddled with before. So I remember we hiked into 2 different sections of the gorge. Started at some of the smaller rapids down below. Before we hiked up to the top to run some of the rapids they never thought I'd run. And we dropped in to rapid number 4. I remember getting flipped upside down and pinned against the wall. And I let go of my paddle with one hand. I started to reach up and pop my skirt to get out of the kayak. And I thought, no, not yet. You've ran every rapid you could possibly run, but one. I said, the safest place is in that boat. I said, not yet. So I grabbed the paddle again with both hands, and I started prying on the wall, just trying to do something. No way I could roll up. I finally started to move, only it was the wrong direction. I started going back upriver. I managed to carp just a little bit of air before I got slammed against the wall a second time. I started prying on that wall again, prying. Finally, I started moving downstream and was able to roll up, just gasping for air. Now I just had rapid number 5 left. And I was supposed to make this left to right move around this pour over, but as I dropped in, I pushed a little bit too hard and too fast to the right and went flying over that pour over, landed it, made one of the best runs I've ever made in my life. And then we paddled on downstream to the rest of the rapids I had already ran. And it was after that I heard those words. Over here, we don't teach the blind. They stand on the corner and beg. I am convinced that I never would have heard those words had that guy not seen us flying over that pour-over. And the simple fact that he insisted that I know he was able to refocus his mind and see someone like me from another perspective. And I've been told now by some folks that go over there every year that they are now teaching the blind over there to garden and to build their huts and stuff like that. What a blessing. What a blessing to be there, to be a part of that. When I sat and I think about all these mountains and these rivers, they're so much like our life. The path down them, it's not always calm and straight, and as you go along, you can't see around a bend to know what's coming next. All of a sudden, it's just chaos. This terrain, it gets rougher, rugged, and steep, or a storm might blow in, or the current just picks up, and there's obstacles everywhere that you got to avoid. You've just been hit by life's adversity. A bad day at work, illness or injury. Or maybe you simply chose the wrong path before you realized it was too late. But So what do? Giving up is not an option. It's just not an option. You know, you sit there, just as sure as these rivers rise and fall, adversity is going to hit us. And you can't give it up. Or you might get swept away or stuck, and the world is still there, and life is passing you by. So I think what you do, no matter how big or how small that adversity is, I think you handle it the same way. You break it down. Acknowledging and accepting that there are differences and difficulties is kind of like that first step up a mountain or paddle stroke through a rapid. It might seem overwhelming, but once you take that step, it gives you the power to visualize every route that you can possibly take. And then it gives you the strength to do what my daughters told me, stand up and step. To where? Into you. Your future, the things you can do, the difference that you can make, and the people you can influence. You guys, I think about this, and I think about the people that are sitting in this room today. You made such a difference, and I'm just so thankful. I'm here, privileged enough to be with the best of the best. But one thing I will tell all of you, and I challenge you to do, when that adversity hits you, if it starts to make your vision get a little dark or cloudy, I want you to pause. And I want you to refocus your mind. I want you to think about the influence of 3 little girls, the innovative use of a cowbell, the vision of a man who can't see or hear, the trust of a crazy climber, and the tenacity of a bunch of disabled kayakers. Then expand your vision. Realize the value and impact that you have in this world, and never, ever, ever quit as you continue to make it a better place, because you do and you can. Thank you.